Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are here to teach you a little bit about having a successful farmers market or pop up or festival wherever you are selling your goods. This is put on by the International Rescue Committee. Um, Guiding you through this experience today will be myself, Jamaica, and Josh, who is also on the call. Say hi, Josh.
Hey everyone, this is Josh Anderson.
And we are small business counselors for the International Rescue Committee here in Salt Lake City. Next slide. Here we give clients one-on-one counseling. We try to meet them where they're at, help them often with registering their business, but sometimes they're existing businesses applying for grants or problem solving. We allow our clients to set goals for themselves, and we are their backup, their counselor, to support them on their journey. We also have small business loans available through our CDFI, and we often give credit building support to individuals with underdeveloped or sort of misdeveloped credit that they want to build their credit score and get in a better position to have typically funding for their business. That's what we work with the most. Next slide. All right, so we are so proud of the local farmers, the local makers, the people that really bring their passion and their product to our community. It's a huge vehicle for power and change in our community. For every dollar spent at a local market, so much of that dollar goes back into our community. And we're just so happy that you're here today. And we want to see what we can do to create a successful market for you this market season and each market season to come. Next slide. So today we are going to go over some tips and tricks for having a successful market experience. At the end of this tutorial, when I'm done with this portion, Josh is going to Josh is going to pitch in with some knowledge on a tool called My Market Profit that's about tracking your markets to figure out which ones are the most successful and really decide how to best use your time and money. So this is my first really important tip on having a successful market day is promoting. And really, you need to use whatever resources you have at your disposal to promote ahead of time for a market because everybody needs to plan, right? And if you can put it on people's calendars ahead of time, that's great. Also, even if they don't put it in their calendar, you're getting them excited by promoting this market. So I have here an example of an Instagram post. There's also an example of a flyer, which is more grassroots. You could take flyers into nearby coffee shops, libraries, community spaces, give them to friends and family. Either way, you're giving people a reminder that your market is coming and what's going to be available at that market. And then when you get closer, you can always have some sort of countdown, like 3 days to market, 2 days to market. And then the day of, we see all sorts of really successful promotion being done. I've seen people promoting like, hey, I'm setting up at the booth. Here we are getting set up for market. What this does is gives people a heads up, like, hey, the market's going to start in a couple of hours. It also can allow you to introduce people to other vendors at the market, get them excited about the whole gathering. And that sort of promotion, that sort of cross promotion with other vendors can be really beneficial for you growing a community of support. Because if you say, hey, can I tag you in this post? You're letting them know that you have their back and chances are they will reciprocate. And so tagging other vendors, creating groups that promote the market is a really successful way to get the word out to a wider audience, maybe people that don't follow you, but now they will. So this is an idea that you could take and really dive into that, creating a timeline and promoting ahead of time and as you get close to the event. Unfortunately, and we'll discuss this a few times because it plays out a lot, people don't have great attention spans any longer. Thanks to maybe social media, who knows, so many factors. But whatever you can do to remind them and keep this on the forefront of their mind, if they really want to come, you sending out those reminders makes this event more successful. And if you're promoting and all the vendors are promoting, it could be a really successful event. Next slide. All right, and then setup. So setup is, we can all agree, I think, that it's a real pain. It's not easy to do. But if you can get a system in place that really supports you, you will get really fast at this. And before you know it, that setup and takedown isn't going to be as difficult as it once was. So one suggestion we have is creating a setup order, fine-tuning this until it really works for you, and then loading your car according to this order. So what you put in first into your vehicle is going to be what you take out last. So just first in, last out. Keep that in mind and just set up your car as you load up to support you in setting up for the market. And another thing is you really need to make sure you have something that is on wheels for getting goods in and out. Often markets are set up in a way that you can't bring your vehicle up to where your tent is going to be. So if you do not have something mobile that helps you get things into the tent area, you're going to end up making limitless trips back and forth to your car, which is going to exhaust you before the market even starts. Next slide. And now we're going to talk about the 4 P's of merchandising. And when we talk about merchandising, it means showing off your product. And these are the 4 P's that we're going to talk about: your product, your placement, your pricing, and your promotion. This comes from, well, it relates really strongly to my grocery background, which is where I have many, many years of experience, but it's relevant to whether your product is produce or soaps or crocheted dolls. This is all really relevant. So let's dig in. Next slide. Okay, so product. It's important that you bring enough product to make a really good looking display. What they talk about in the grocery world is full and fresh. And the product that you have is really, you're going to want it to reflect your work. So you're going to want it to be your best product. People make assumptions about your display pretty quickly. I don't even think that they realize that. And whether or not they stop and really dig in and purchase things is going to depend a lot on how they just instantly respond to whatever kind of display you created. And I know it's hard to do this as you sell that on product. So we're going to talk about some tips there on the next slide, but it's possible to always create a fresh and full looking display, or at least a very intentional display. Placement is also key. So putting items next to each other if they sell well together is a good idea. This is why you might see in a produce display basil next to tomatoes, because people are often having summer dishes that put those two together. So if someone's buying tomatoes, they're going to grab the basil. Also, having height in various levels creates visual interest. It shows that you've thought out your display. It's a way to highlight certain products and not have them hide behind others. And nobody really likes things just laying out flat on a table. Whatever you can do to create interest and a visually interesting and pleasant display is beneficial. Um, Also, thinking about where you place things is crucial to increasing what they call basket size, or what the client or customer purchases. So a customer is most likely to grab a little something as they check out if it's affordable right there, kind of an impulse buy. And you see this most commonly in the grocery store by each checkout lane having candy bars, right? Candy bars, sodas, and coolers, because every time a customer purchases an additional item that might cost $2 or $3, you're increasing each customer's basket size by that $2 to $3, and it adds up over time. So having items near where the customer is going to be purchasing their goods that they are likely to just grab as an impulse buy is another idea of good placement. Next slide. All right, so even as you sell down, it's possible to make your display look intentional. What you could do on this table is perhaps remove some of those baskets that are pretty empty. You could consolidate similar products into the same basket. You could move things closer together so it looks thought out. And another good idea would be bringing in some sort of signage. Next slide. Here's an example of a table that has very little produce for sale. Maybe he sold down, he only has one cabbage left, but he has still created an intentional display and it still looks enticing and well thought out and cared for, which reflects upon you and increases your sales. Next slide. Here are just a number of displays, and here we can assess now based on the 4Ps. How does the product look? What does that placement look like? Is it priced and easy to navigate? Are you able to grab and get an item if you need it? Some of these are more successful than others, but all of them are considering a visual display that's enticing, that draws your eye to the products. Also, all but one of these is really good at pricing things. The first rule of customer service is making sure that your display is easy to navigate, that people know what things are and how much they cost. One thing individuals don't like to do is ask you. They don't like to put you out and say, how much is this? Especially because then they might feel obligated to buy it and they're worried it might be too expensive. So if you're not pricing your goods really clearly, you're going to have that impact your sales. Next slide. All right, pricing is something that we could really talk about at length. There are a number of ways to price your goods, or what we call pricing strategies. We've included some links here. And those of you who have attended this in person, we will be sending out this presentation so that you can follow these links. But there are a number of pricing strategies to help you figure out how to price your goods. It is one of the most important things you do. First of all, it should be very clear how much things cost. Second of all, you need to do the work to understand how much you're spending to produce each good. That's time, money, energy, and then making sure that you're getting enough profit margin on top of that to make it worth your while to be doing this. Also, you need to make sure that you're competitive. So you need to understand how much your product is selling for in the community around you at that market and other markets so that you can be competitive. Now, if you have a product that's special in some way or another, like it is organic or it is unique to the area, hard to find, all of these things would allow you to have something priced higher, but you need to tell the story of that item. Don't price something higher if you're not going to present it as special and why, so that you can have people not associate you with just having high prices out of nowhere, but actually show that you have something that's worth more and has more value. So when we price things for market, usually people are pricing things according to markup, but there is also something called margin. So margin and markup are two different items. Most farmers market vendors, most retail pop-ups and festival vendors are just operating on markup. They might take something that costs $5 to produce and mark it up double. So that is a good example of markup. Margin is more complicated and we're not going to discuss it in depth today, but if you ever get to the point that you are going to sell into stores, you're going to want to do some research on profit margin because that is how bigger stores operate when considering the profit for goods that they purchase. Promotion. So we already touched base on this a little bit. If you want to draw attention to items that are a big part of your identity, something that you want people to remember you for, something that sets you apart, you're going to want to promote it. Very clear signage, tell why it's different. Another thing is if you have a sale or an item that is really affordable, something that could increase your success at the market, make sure it's very clear. So having a sale sign that's really visible and really clear terms could really improve your sales. And many stores and markets have discount strategies where they have a few items that they might not make much money on at all. In general, though, by having that bold and beautiful sign that talks about the seller discount, people think that overall it's a more affordable shopping experience, and they're much more likely, because they feel like they're saving money on one thing, to spend money on others. So there are grocery stores that, for example, will lose money on a lot of their produce in order to make money in their deli and in their packaged goods. They know that that produce is a draw for customers. So you can take some of these strategies like buy one, get one free, or we'll discount 50% or 25% off a larger purchase of maybe kale. And this is a way for you to get rid of a product that maybe you have a bunch of and also just draw people in. And in a perfect world, and most likely they will purchase more product that is not on sale too, and it will make up for that discount. Next slide. So it's really important in these market environments to understand what sets you apart and keeps customers returning to you. So I know that we want to feel unique, and we are all unique. And a customer might come to your booth and have a great interaction with you, but when they come the next week, they might want to find your booth and just fail to remember where you are and how to find you. So little things that help people with limited attention spans really helps. Maybe this woman who's wearing this bright red shirt also uses a red tablecloth and uses red borders around her signs. That's an easy way that customers can remember you on a level that they might not even be consciously aware of. The next time they come to the market, they might think, oh, I had this great interaction with this woman. She helped me learn how to use radishes in a way that I had never thought about using them. How can I find her? And then their mind might go to like, oh, that's her. She's always wearing red. Or her booth always has those funny signs, or her booth always has sunflowers. There has to be a way for them to take their personal connection to you, but also remember where you are and build that loyalty by coming back week after week. Um, so creating a positive customer experience is really crucial. We need that good customer service, personal connection, fresh quality products. We need an easy to shop booth experience, and we need a perceived value so they feel that they are getting a good value for whatever they spent. But all of that is not as useful in getting somebody to return to you over and over again, unless you make it easy to remember who and where you are. So little hacks like that are really helpful. Um, Also, know who your customer is. We constantly have businesses we're working with here. When we ask them, who is your customer? They say, everyone's my customer. And that's simply not the case. We, in a farmer's market environment, for example, have people that are buying produce. Now, there are a lot of people out there that wouldn't know the first thing to do with fresh produce. They simply haven't been taught how to cook. But farmers market people, they like to shop for produce. They like to use it at home. They also like to shop local and support local makers. So that is a specific type of customer. So whatever market you're in, who's your customer? What brings them to you? How can you appeal specifically to them to increase customer loyalty and repeat purchases? Next slide. This is one that I know it sounds common sense, but I can't tell you how often we see people having issues with this. You need to make it easy to buy your goods. We don't want those customers having to say, where do I go to pay, for example. We also don't want them having to ask you, what kind of payment do you accept? Again, the first rule of customer service is make it really clear how much your products cost and how to pay you. Things like this. Customers don't like having to ask questions. They feel like they're putting you out. So you should always have something very clear that says what types of payments are accepted at your table or booth. And it's much to your benefit to take multiple kinds of payments to work with multiple people. Um, some of the online payments that you can use your phone have really changed the way farmers markets function, and QR codes are now very commonplace. So rather than having your customer have to ask you for your QR code and you getting out your phone when maybe you're busy helping another customer, have your QR code printed and ready to go. You've got to make it really easy for them to pay you if you're going to want to make money. You also need to make it really clear where they go to check out. Sometimes we have small farmers markets where it's very clear that they just have to talk to you and pay you. But sometimes we have a bigger booth where they're perusing different products, and there's a flow to that setup that you should consider that ends in the payment area. Maybe you have a couple people working that type of booth. And so make it very clear where customers go when they want to purchase goods. Next slide. Okay, this is another often underutilized thing about farmers markets or pop-up events or festivals. If you have your customer in front of you, make that time count. This is an opportunity you're not always going to have. You might have a product that they could purchase online throughout the months following that event. You might have multiple markets that summer or that season, and you want them to know when the next market is. These are all things that will increase customer following, increase purchases. So if you have a customer in front of you at a farmer's market, what can you do to create more purchases for yourself in the future? Next slide. First of all, have a clear ask. Maybe that ask is, hey, write a review for us on Google or Yelp and get 10% off today. Maybe the ask is, please follow us on Instagram so you know when our next market is. Or, hey, share a picture of you to your Instagram story and tag us so that your friends know about us. Any of these asks are really relevant in increasing your success after this event. So have a clear ask, make it easy to follow through, and then give the customer an incentive. Like I said, we had that one ask, write a review on Google or Yelp and show it to us right now, and you get 10% off your purchase. Or share a picture of you on your Instagram story and tag us. They can show you right then and there. Everybody has their phone on them these days. So if they do something like this, it increases your following. Make it easy to do, have an ask, create an incentive. Most customers will think it's really fun if they get 10% off that purchase. Another idea is just have this sort of offer on a tag on your product. This tag that is in the presentation here says 10% off your first online purchase. Now they might take that tag once they're home and go to your online store because they have an incentive. So take advantage of your time with that customer facing moment at the market and increase your sales over time. Next slide. All right, so that is the presentation on tips and tricks for markets. Now we're going to have Josh explain to you this free tool that helps you track markets, because we often operate as entrepreneurs based on feelings. Like, I feel that that market I did in this location was better than that one. But really, it's a matter of tracking these things so you know where you're spending your money, where you're finding your customers, where you have the most success, so that you can adjust each season and become more profitable. Take it from here, Josh.
Thanks, Jamaica. Like Jamaica said, I'm going to be walking you guys through an example of how to use a tool called My Market Profit. This is a super easy to use tool that will allow you to track your expenses and sales. And the tool is super handy because it automatically calculates for you, your revenue, and it does a lot of, simple math work for you. So like I said, it's completely free, super easy to use. Um, so yeah, we'll get started. I have a link right here if you guys want to follow this link to go to the software, or you can also scan this QR code that'll take you to the page. You will have to register an account when you get started, but it's a super easy setup and only takes a few minutes. So once you are in My Market software, there are two different tools you can use. You can either create an analysis or create a projection. An analysis is a tool that allows you to track your income and expenses in previous markets, so markets you've already attended. You can also do a projection, which is a tool that allows you to plan or predict your profits for future markets. In this example, I'm going to be going through and inputting data from markets I've already attended. So the analysis tool will be the best one to use for this example. So, like I said, in this example, I'm going to be going and reporting all of the farmers markets I attended in 2025. So I'll make sure to put that in the report name and I'll put in the dates for the whole season where I performed where I went to farmers markets at. And then once you get to this screen, there are really just three easy steps to follow to use this tool effectively and to calculate your market profit. First, you're going to input your revenue or how much money you earned. Next, you'll input your expenses. This is how much money you spent, including your labor cost. And then, like I said, the software will automatically calculate your profit for you. And again, the profit is the revenue minus your expenses. And all three of those steps are reflected on the left-hand side of this screen here. There is a labor section in this tool, but we are going to counsel you just for easy use to skip the labor section and instead put your labor cost in the expenses category. It's just a little bit easier. It gets a little bit complicated when you add in labor using this section. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to work on inputting revenue for the markets I attended. So I want to make sure that the revenue tab is selected, and then you'll click Add Market to start recording your data. The first market I attended was on May 10th in Salt Lake City. So I'll want to put, some sort of name or indication of the market here. And then you want to select farmers market for the farmers type. There are a number of different options, but obviously this was a farmers market I attended. And then you'll have two different options of how you want to enter your sales. For this example, I'm going to be doing total sales. This is just where you record how much revenue I made for the entire day at the market, which you can see in this example is $500. There is also an option where you can input each product you sold individually using this product sales option. So, for example, if I sold, bracelets, jewelry, and earrings, I can put every individual product and how much I sold. Um, and that's an easy tool to use if you want to track how your individual items are performing. Um, but for this example, I'm just going to be doing total sales for the purpose of this demonstration. So now we can see here that I've input, the market name and our total revenue. Um, Once then I'll go in and I just went in and added to the rest of the markets I attended for the season using the same process. Um, and you can choose to do it this way, like I have. I went in after the season and added all of my, data from the season. Or you can just as easily choose to, just take 5 or 10 minutes after every market you attend and just, take a couple minutes to record this data and you can track, moving throughout your season, how you're performing. So now that I've input all my revenue, next we'll do the expenses. There's a lot of different categories to choose from in this expense option. I think some common expenditures to consider would be things like, your packaging and supplies, whether that's like bags you use to sell your products or, supplies like the signage that Jamaica was talking about. Those things cost money and we want to make sure we consider that in our expenses. Things like vendor fees. If you're paying, oftentimes, market attendees will have to pay the vendor to participate. So we'll want to make sure we include that. Things like auto and travel for gas. It obviously costs you money to get to and from these markets. So we want to consider that. And then things like production cost and cost of goods. For the materials, if you're making a necklace, for example, all the cost it took for the beads or the wire or the tools, things like that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure we're also including labor cost in the expenses category. It's really important that we make sure to pay ourselves for our time. Um, and I think sometimes people have a hard time deciding how much their labor should cost. And if that's the case with you, then I would maybe consider, what would you pay somebody else for the time and energy it took to put on this market? Just choose a flat amount or maybe an hourly amount that you're choosing to pay yourself, and make sure that that cost is included in the expense category here. There is an option in this tool where you can split your expenses individually by market. So we can see on the market split, I have my three different markets revenue that I input earlier right here. And we can choose to split the expense by individual market. So you'll go ahead and click the split function here. And then you want to make sure you have the amount tab selected in this screen. This one just allows you to add, individual dollar amounts rather than percentage. But in this example, we can see that I spent $90 total throughout the market season on gas. But in between the three different markets, you can see here in Ogden, it's obviously a lot further for me. So I spent much more money in this example, $50 to get to Ogden and back. But then the two markets I participated in Salt Lake City were much closer to me, so I only spent $20. So this is how I would split my expenditures by market. And then once you have input all of your expenses, the software will automatically calculate your results for you using this calculate results screen. So we can see that I have my total revenue, my total expenses, and those are broken down, by market and by expense category below. And then the software will automatically, calculate for me what my profit was. So this is a super easy way to just get a nice overview of my entire market performance. But there is also something called the comparisons tab, where we'll be able to compare my performance individually, market by market. So we'll do that by clicking on the comparisons button, which will take us to this screen. So we can see here it'll break down, all the individual information by market. Um, and then on this page, we have a couple more examples of how it breaks down, our revenue. It'll break us down the percentage of all sales, and it'll break it down by expense category. So this is a really easy way for me to, have a snapshot view to understand how I'm performing at different markets. Maybe I'm seeing that I make a lot more money in one location as opposed to another. Maybe I'm seeing that, maybe the Ogden location is a lot more expensive than it is in Salt Lake. Um, so this comparisons option can give you some really interesting information on how I'm performing now, and I can use that information to improve my performance going forward in future markets. So if you didn't get a chance in the beginning, here's the link if you want to access this tool, as well as the QR code. Um, and that's all. Thanks, Tamika.
Thanks, Josh. And good luck everyone with their market season. We know you've got this. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to the IRC and get yourself a nice little business counselor to support you on your journey. Good luck, everyone.